Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Today I want to share some info about two gardening techniques that can help you to get an awful lot more out of your flowering plants. They are deadheading and division. Now, deadheading is as simple as this: pulling off the spent flowers from your shrubs and your perennials to help them to reset and send more flowers in your garden. The second one, division, I showed an example of this recently where I divided a daylily in the garden. You just cut it apart and you create more plants out of it, at the same time eliminating the unproductive center of the plant and improving the condition in your garden. Both of these techniques, deadheading and division, are pretty easy to do, and I'll give you some more examples of the division later in this video, but they are time, or shall I say timing sensitive. That is, for deadheading, you actually, in my climate, want to stop doing it right now, but for division, you actually want to start doing it right now in the fall season, or classically, this would be the time when most of your spring blooming perennials are great for division. So let's talk a little bit more about what the timing concerns are, and I want to give you those examples of some more division. This is a hybrid tea rose called Indian Summer. I love the form on that. Your timing on deadheading begins in spring when your annuals, perennials, and some shrubs like roses have put out their first set of blooms, and then you can pull off any spent blooms to help encourage them to keep on going throughout the year. At the same time, if it's starting to grow off in one direction or the other, or you're seeing any problems with health, you can address that at the same time. So I look at deadheading as a time, an opportune time to tune up your plants and improve their condition through the season. But now is the time to stop because we're approaching colder nights. Now your climate may vary, but in northern temperate climates, it is usually at the end of August, beginning of September, that you consider stopping deadheading. Late September is when we get the fall equinox, so the days are getting shorter. There's going to be less energy and less sunshine to encourage more blooms, and of course, following that, we're ending up with colder nights that are starting to discourage the reblooming. And so you really want to give your plants, like these roses, some time to wind down, to settle down and stop flowering. I stop my fertilizing at this time as well. While those cooler temperatures spell the end for deadheading, it is exactly the opposite story for division. Most plants that like to be divided, perennials I'm talking about primarily here, want to be divided when that pause in flowering happens and it starts to get a bit cooler and less stressful in the fall. Like this monarda, for instance, so I'm going to use an example, because what happens is, as a monarda grows, the center of the perennial starts to become a little bit less productive. It's crowded in and ringed in by the outer ring of more productive stems. So if you want to keep it in really good condition over a length of time, hefting out a section of the side or many sections of the side and dividing it out and putting it in different areas of the garden is really the way to go. So let's have a look at this monarda here. I also want to show you a sanguisorba that I'll be dividing, and maybe a couple of other things as well. Well, there really is no graceful way to shovel this out of the ground. What I'm looking for in this case is something between 8 and 12 inches across from the edge of the patch that's still quite vigorous. And what I love about monarda is it almost divides itself. As I pull out this shoot here, you can see it's broken off a nice rooted portion across the bottom here. And so with this, just this way, all I'm going to do is cut off some of the extra stem at the top, leaving some leaves at the top. I already have roots at the bottom, and then I'm going to throw it into this pot here, not too deep, maybe a couple inches, 3 inches deep, to let the roots penetrate the rest of the pot. I've used a 6-inch or 1-gallon nursery pot here, just because for me it matches what I'll be selling my perennials in next year, but anything approximately this size is just fine. And you can see from here, I'm going to get quite a few out of this patch here. I also wanted to show you that sanguisorba, and as I give you a close-up of the sanguisorba here, you'll see how much smaller it is compared to the daylily I did previously and this one here, which have big chunky parts. The sanguisorba is very fine, and as I cut it out here, you can see that it just has tiny little pieces that I'm going to divide, but exactly the same way. Well, here's that clump dug out of the garden, and you can see larger roots here, but what I'm kind of more interested in is whether any of these smaller shoots on the side could just be pried away with a little bit of shoot on the top and a little bit of root on the bottom, like that one there, or this one here. And I wonder what would happen if I stuck those into a plug tray to try to root on their own. Well, I guess I don't really have to wonder, because that's exactly what I did a few weeks ago. This would have been about a month ago, say, and I stuck some shoots exactly like that into the plug tray and ended up with a beautifully rooted plug just like this one. My third example today is a blue fescue grass from a pot. Ornamental grasses, in case you're wondering, are an excellent subject for division, and I would venture to do them anytime that they're in active growth throughout the season, so I wouldn't have to wait until fall to try this. I'm going to give this a pull out of the pot here. Yeah, big fibrous root system there, and what I'm attempting to do, once again, is I'm targeting the crown. So if I take that crown of the grass and cut it, sort of split it down the middle to make sure that I have both roots and crown on both sides, then I can tease it apart and try to get some plugs out of this. It did a little unevenly here, so it lost some grasses on this side, but this would certainly be a viable clump over here, and probably get this one down to another viable clump. And I guess experienced propagators would even take them smaller than this, but for me, getting 3 grasses out of one is just fine. Hostas are another excellent subject for division, and the question whether you should do it in spring or fall, well, the answer, you could probably do either one, so long as you make sure there's enough growing time after division. So early September in my climate is the right time to do this. I'm hitting it right on the money, and I'm moving these due to a landscaping project anyway, so these are coming with me. And whether you're dealing with the tiny little shoots of the sanguisorba or these relatively much more robust shoots of the hosta, the game is still the same. With whatever tools you have, you want to work out a way to separate a section, a viable section, that has a little bit of roots on the bottom and some shoots on the top. And this would be just fine. For those who are curious, that one dug clump of hostas ended up yielding something in the range of 11 viable plants that I will pot up into 1 or 2 gallon pots depending on what they fit best into, either for sale or transplant next year. I hope you have enjoyed this video and understand the theme of it is why it's time to knock off deadheading these and start working on dividing those as the best use of your efforts in the garden. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please drop those down into the comments below the video. I'll see what I can do to help.